Hello, and welcome back to Silverhawk Farm. My name is Bree, and you are in my kitchen. I'm planning for roughly half of this channel to be kitchen oriented. So the biggest thing is like having a farm. You have a lot of food that comes in. So one of the things that I really want to focus on is processing the abundance of food that comes in, particularly if you're a person who procrastinates and ends up with 10 dozen eggs on your counter. I did count it just now. It did take me that long to count to 10. I don't want to talk about it. But today, we are going to be processing as many eggs as we can. These are the eggs I currently have for the most part. There's some in the incubator, some in the garage from this morning, and then probably some in the coop by now. But for the most part, this is my backlog of eggs. None of these is older than a few weeks old. It takes a long time for eggs to go bad. Like farm fresh eggs that have been unwashed, even at room temperature, it takes a long time. So I'm not really worried about any of these. Obviously, I have an affinity of different rainbow colored egg layers. So the main breeds that I have for that are my black copper Morans, which lay these like really nice dark chocolate brown egg. The most tragic thing about them is that honestly, like no video or photo can do justice to how beautiful they are. You gotta see them in person. And then we have some blue eggs that are from my Americana hens. And then so these peachy ones are from Wyandottes. And then these are my new production hens. They lay massive eggs and they lay so much. So today we're gonna be making a few different things. I'm gonna be making some fresh pasta, which is my favorite way to use up eggs when I am sick of eggs because it's springtime and I've been eating them for weeks. And then we're going to be freezing some eggs by mixing them and putting them in a freezer safe container. That's one of my favorite ways to preserve eggs. It's really easy, and the texture of the eggs when they come out, like you can't tell the difference once it's cooked. It's wild. So we're gonna be doing that, and then we are also going to be doing some soft boiled eggs that I'm going to be putting in a soy sauce based sauce to be used for ramen. That's one of my favorite ways also to use eggs is on top of ramen, either traditional ramen or like the stuff in the little 30-cent packet. Both a totally valid option. So I'm gonna be using a food processor to make the fresh pasta. And that's going to make it so that I have this freed up for rolling out. And also, I just really need to take care of, I need to service my KitchenAid. I need to like take it apart and do all the like maintenance-y things, so I'm trying to go easy on it lately. So I'm gonna be using my food processor, which is really great and totally viable. I've definitely used it before for making pasta. It works out really well. You can totally make pasta by hand. That's absolutely an option. I have found it to be much less frustrating and much faster to make it using some sort of mixer, and especially since I'm making like lots of batches of pasta. We're gonna be making lots of pasta today. I'm going to go ahead and use machines. I'm gonna get these cleared out. I'll get those washed, and then we will get going on making some pasta. All right, I am back and I have my eggs washed, save a few dozen just in case we don't get to them. And I am ready to start our pasta in the Ninja food processor. So basically, I'm following the recipe I could find that has the most eggs in them because I want to use eggs, but also because I like a rich pasta. Like I enjoy that, I think it's delicious. So this one uses 5 large eggs. This is literally just the recipe that came in the manual for this off-brand KitchenAid attachment. So I converted it to weight because I don't like to weigh flour. I don't like to measure flour with my measuring cups because it can be pretty unreliable depending on like how you scoop it and how much it packs, and just too many factors. There are too many factors. It's, if you have a scale, use a scale. If you don't have a scale and you are a person who has $10, get the cheap scale. It's gonna work fine. They're amazing to have for baking type of things. So my hands are clean. I've got the eggs and the flour in here. There are no other ingredients. We'll be salting the pasta water when we cook with this. And we'll just get it put on the food processor and ready to go. I usually don't operate my food processor facing away from me, so if I'm awkward, that's why. I got my dough out of the food processor. It was a difficult process. This is much too sticky. I'm inclined to blame the recipe. I think that using a recipe with 5 eggs was a bit much, and I'm gonna try a different recipe for next round of pasta, which is totally fine. This one, I'm gonna go ahead and just incorporate a little bit more flour to make it workable. And see, it's already becoming more pliable. I think it's gonna be absolutely fine. But I am gonna just knead it a tiny bit. I feel like this is incorporating too much flour. We don't wanna incorporate too much flour. You don't want a dry dough because it's gonna stretch really thin, and if it's dry, it'll crack and really frustrate you. Speaking from experience, it will really frustrate you. So I'm just hand kneading a little bit until it feels a little bit tacky, a little bit springy. Yeah, that's nice. Actually, I may have spoke too soon. It may have just needed a little bit of kneading. Bench scrapers, not necessary, but really handy if you work with a lot of dough. That's this guy. It just allows you to kind of like get in. If you're working with something that's really wet, it can save you a lot of frustration of like sticky hand things. If you're a person who has sensory issues and you don't like to touch things directly, you could totally make bread with only this and like a spoon or spatula. All right, this guy looks awesome, actually. I'm really happy with it. I am gonna grab some plastic wrap and go ahead and get it wrapped up. I haven't found anything that is a plastic alternative that works well for this, because you really, really want it to be airtight and not forming a skin, or it's gonna be difficult to roll out. So I'm gonna grab that, get it wrapped up. All right, we have it in a circle. Happy little guy. Going in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. You could keep it in the fridge, I think up to a few days, and then you can also just freeze it like this. If I were to freeze it like this, I would also add a layer of aluminum foil for some extra protection and freeze it just like this. We are actually gonna be making some extra for freezing, but I'm gonna roll it out all the way so that I have frozen noodles that I can just throw in some pasta water without having the extra step of rolling it out. So, or having it thaw in my fridge and forgetting about it. That's what would actually happen. Good afternoon. It is the next day. I started to run out of battery, both for my camera and my body. So we decided to pick back up, and honestly, the dough that we made for the pasta is probably going to taste better for it, because sometimes letting things rest for longer will allow them to develop a better flavor. So excited for that. We're gonna grab those and start getting them rolled out. I'm only gonna pull them out one at a time, and we'll get them fed through this guy. I haven't used this specific attachment before on the stand mixer, but I do have the hand crank one that I got. I I like having that because it can't break. It's gonna last forever. It's amazing. But it does require either 2 people or a lot of dexterity. So this one will allow me to do it by myself pretty easily and quickly. So I'm excited for that. So I'm gonna get that started and rolled out, and yeah, let's go. So we've got our essential tools. We've got our dough, got a rolling pin. This one's tapered. Yours doesn't need to be. It's just my favorite rolling pin. I like the taper. It makes me feel in control of things. And then we've got this guy, which attaches to the KitchenAid. This is the flat dough attachment that you'll use to create like all of the dough. And then you can use, they make more of them than this, but these are the basic ones they come with. Either fettuccine or spaghetti, which for me covers all major bases. I either want spaghetti with marinara sauce or I want fettuccine with some sort of a white sauce. Those are my 2 modes. But you can also make all sorts of other shapes just by making the sheet and then like shaping it. So that's lovely. All right, let's get this rolled out. We want these to stay really, really safe from air. So I'm gonna cut off as much as I'm gonna roll out at a time, and we're gonna put the rest back immediately and cover it with plastic. That's gonna prevent it from forming a skin, which will crack your dough. Just gonna smush this on top of it, it's fine. And then one mistake I have made and that I've seen a lot of people make is not using enough flour during this process. Like during this process, you actually want like a decent amount of flour to be going in to your dough so that it feeds cleanly through the machine. That's like much too sticky. I'm a hypocrite. Like a decent amount, yeah. Because this is gonna stretch out really, really thin. This is gonna end up being a lot of dough. Okay, this guy is fine. This is thin enough that it'll go through the machine, which is all you really need. So I'm just gonna take my stand mixer now. I'm gonna unscrew this guy, this little knob. Don't make it fall, just keep it in your hand. Insert this guy. It's just trying to line up just right, there we go. Nice and snug. And then it says to use 2 or 4. I'm kind of nervous, so I'm gonna start with just the stir function and hope that it works. No reason it shouldn't. Okay, I see why they'd say that's a little too slow. I gotcha. On this one, 8 is the widest setting. Well, right now I'm starting on 8, which is the widest setting I've verified by looking at it with my eyes. I'm running it through on the widest setting a few times so that it kind of evens out. That can prevent some problems later on. Then I'm moving it down 1 setting to 7. So I double checked the manual for this guy and it recommends 6 or 5 for a good pasta. So we're on 7 now and I'm turning it back to 2 on my stand mixer. Sweet. I love that. That was a billion times easier than the hand crank one. I'm glad to have the hand crank one for the apocalypse so I can still make fresh pasta, or if my motor runs out, or if I get frustrated with this, or if I want my kid to help. But otherwise, it's very nice to be able to do this on my own. All right, I'm making this into, look, I probably should have done in half because these 2 are a little short for my liking, but it's fine. We're making a ton of pasta and it doesn't matter. I'm gonna grab a sheet that we're gonna put the finished pasta on. We're gonna let it dry a little bit on that before I flash freeze it so that it can not stick together in the freezer in one big awkward clump that becomes disgusting later. So now I'm going to switch this out. We don't want anything sticking to this pan. Anytime you've heard people have issues with like stuff getting stuck, it's definitely under flour. Carefully, carefully. Do you see how this is gonna make a lot of pasta? Like these 3 piles of pasta are already quite a bit. I'm just mixing this one up with extra flour because I did the thing I told you not to do while I was telling you not to do it. Hello. It is a certain number of days later. I'm honestly not certain how long it's been since my last recording. So today we're gonna finish up with the processing. The pasta went swimmingly. I probably left the dough for a little bit too long, so it got a little discolored. It just becomes discolored if you leave it in the fridge for more than about 24 hours, which I did. But then I processed it all, dehydrated it, and got it in the freezer. I actually vacuum sealed it so that it would be like really nice for a long time. Right now, the very first thing that I'm gonna be doing is just freezing eggs, which is the easiest thing on the planet, and also one of my favorite ways to preserve eggs. So I'm gonna grab a small bowl and I'm going to crack 2 eggs at a time into this to go into the freezer, just to keep me safe from if any of the eggs are wonky or unappetizing. I have the option to not mess with this big vat of eggs that I've poured together. So let's go ahead and do that. Basically, all I do for this is I crack eggs, I scramble them up, and then I put them in a freezer safe container. You can absolutely use non-plastic freezer safe containers for this. I like plastic because it doesn't shatter even if you overfill it, and I just don't want to, one less thing to worry about. So I found these actually, some Instagrammer was like mentioned using them, and I actually can't remember. If I can find the link to these specific plastic things, I'll link it in the show notes below. But basically it's a thicker plastic. You've probably seen these. If you've ordered from a Chinese food place, or like a lot of mine are from my local ramen place because I love ramen. So this is actually a little thicker plastic than this. This is meant to be used in the freezer. It's meant to be freezer safe. So I actually have one of my local ramen containers. Shout out Ramen Bowls, Lawrence, Kansas, I love you. But you can kind of see, one of them is really opaque and like you can't see through. One of them is really clear and much thinner. I'm using the smaller containers today because if I remember correctly, they hold about 8 eggs, which is quite a few. And the larger container, which is about this size, holds about 16. I love these eggs for midwinter when my hens are no longer laying and I'm able to still have fresh farm eggs and not have to buy them. So I'm gonna get to cracking while I tell you about how these work. So basically, oh shoot, I need a shells container, huh? And all I'm doing right now is cracking my eggs into a small bowl and then moving them into the larger bowl after scrambling them a bit. And I might do a little bit more scrambling once they're in the container, but they can get very full. Always crack your eggs on a flat surface. You've heard of cracking your eggs on the bowl, and actually that can increase your chances of ending up with shell in something. And then I'm just scrambling it a bit in the container. So what's going to happen to the consistency of these eggs is that they will freeze. It will change the consistency. It will not be exactly the same as a regular egg. So the things that I'm gonna use that for are baking, scrambled eggs, things where you don't want the yolks to be intact, right? But I have done the ultimate test of my easily grossed out husband, and I served them some eggs that I had frozen and then scrambled, and they had no idea that they had ever been frozen. So I feel pretty confident, and like I've never been able to tell the difference when it comes to their quality. The one caveat that I want to say is when you take them out, you want to thaw them in the fridge. And then when you pour them out before they're cooked, they are gonna have a really weird texture. And it's almost like gelatinous. It's a weird texture. It's not appetizing. Push through it, it's fine. But once you actually cook them, you can't tell the difference at all. It's wild. It's absolutely bizarre. So this is 8 eggs in one container, which is gonna be like a lovely, fairly large breakfast for my family. All right, friends, I am done. I have a whole bunch of eggshells, a whole bunch of eggs, and freezer-safe containers that are quite full. So I'm gonna go ahead and get them put back in the deep freeze. All right, so I've got all of my eggs that were in their plastic containers mixed up and in the freezer. It's gonna be a decent amount of eggs that will help me during the short time that my hens aren't laying very much over the winter. I'm really excited to have some hard-boiled and some soft-boiled eggs today. We're gonna be doing a like ramen egg. If you've ever had traditional ramen with the egg that's like brown on the inside and you wanna know why it's the most tasty thing you've ever had in your life, we're gonna learn that today, I hope. I haven't actually I've made a lot of like hard-boiled and soft-boiled eggs, but I've never actually made eggs for ramen that are like steeped in the soy sauce like that. So we're learning together, and you're not allowed to judge me, so yeah. My favorite way to make eggs that are hard-boiled or soft-boiled or any sort of boiled are in the Instant Pot. And one reason for that is because the pressure cooking makes it so it's actually easier to peel. If you've never worked with farm fresh eggs before, they're actually much harder to peel. You can totally just use boiling water on a stove in a pot to make your hard-boiled and or soft-boiled eggs. If you have an Instant Pot, use it. If you don't, there are a million recipes online that are very accurate as far as getting the right consistency of egg that you really like. So use those, you have options. I'm gonna use this tool because I have one. This is a trivet. It did not come with my pressure cooker, but it basically has holes in it, and it holds it a little bit further off of the water for things like if you want to steam them. Or in this case, if you want to kind of hug them so that they can cook nicely without moving around in some very hot water. So they're gonna stay a little bit more together with this. And I'm just gently putting my eggs down into the trivet. For soft-boiled eggs, we're gonna do 5 minutes of low pressure cooking and then a 5-minute release. So I definitely didn't record a bunch of stuff and forget to turn my mic on. That didn't happen. There's a reason that I'm halfway done with this task without recording any of it. So we've got the Instant Pot making some hard-boiled eggs. I put it in for 11 minutes on low pressure, and then I'm going to let it naturally pressure release for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to unseal. If you're new to Instant Pot cooking, I promise I'll do a video on what all that means later. But here we are. What we're doing now is I have these lovely soft-boiled eggs, and I am taking all of the shells off, and I'm gonna be putting them in a combination of soy sauce, mirin, which is a Japanese cooking sauce that's quite sweet and absolutely delicious, and then also some water to dilute it. And then we're gonna put that in the fridge for just a few days. And basically that's gonna like soak up all that deliciousness and saltiness and like savory flavor and make for the best ramen ever. We have our peeled soft-boiled eggs. You could also use hard-boiled eggs. People who make ramen would argue with you if you made hard-boiled eggs with this, but I won't argue with you. Soy sauce, mirin. I am willing to grab water when it calls for it. So I went ahead and put a paper towel over the top of the eggs with the liquid on top. And that's basically just gonna keep it from having one spot on top that's just like white and not marinated. And then our hard-boiled eggs are ready. So I'll go ahead and grab those out, put them in some water, and those I'm just gonna throw directly in the fridge so that my kid can eat them over the week, after they've had a minute to cool. So that's it. We've got our hard-boiled eggs, soft-boiled eggs made into ramen eggs. We've got tons and tons of noodles, lots of eggs that have been scrambled and frozen. And the great thing is that I'm down to 1 dozen eggs on my counter, which is absolutely wild and never happens. And tomorrow there will be 2 dozen, but we'll worry about that then. I really appreciate you watching and hanging out, and especially with a little bit of a longer video that got away from me a bit, but honestly, a really robust harvest sometimes does. Remember to do the liking and subscribing for the YouTube robots, and I will see you again soon. Okay, love you, bye. Do 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 do.